Scientific theory. The scientific method is something that you use every day without even thinking about it. Getting dressed this morning, let's say you couldn't find your shoes. The observation, what is the problem? Your shoes are missing. You can come up with a hypothesis or way to solve the problem. In this case, you would maybe think the last place you saw them or where you took them off. The experiment would be going to the location to see if they are there. If yes, all is good and your conclusion is that you left your shoes in spot A. If they are not there, you need to make a new hypothesis. So let's come up with a new one. Maybe the dog took our shoes. So now we're going to look in the places that the dog hides shoes as our experiment. So we start looking under the bed, maybe out back, I don't know where dogs might take your shoes. So then you would again make a conclusion. If you find your shoes, then your experiment has ended, and if not, you repeat the cycle and back up to the observation stage. Cooking is another area where you use the scientific method and not really think about it. When, let's say you make chili, the one thing with the scientific method is that your experiment has to be something that is testable and measurable. So the problem with using cooking as a true example would be that taste is subjective. So if you make chili, you may think it's hot enough, but then your friends might think it's too hot, or maybe it's not hot enough. In science, we have a lot of charts and guides for this. One example is a color chart for soil. So, I mean, you may go outside and say soil's brown. Well, what shade of brown? This puts an end to that, subjectiveness. You can actually match it up to a specific color and ID it that way. In any experiment, you want to record your observations, what you actually see, without drawing a conclusion. During my field research, we had to make observations on the beach, and I wrote down tire tracks as one of mine, and it was incorrect, because I did not, in fact, see the tire making the track. I could see a pattern in the sand, which I could describe, but I couldn't say tire because I didn't have any conclusive evidence that a tire made that track. Anytime we do an experiment, there's always room for error. That's why they're experiments. So sometimes when you do an experiment, you maybe collect the data the wrong way, or you mix something wrong. Anytime something doesn't go quite right in your experiment, in your conclusion, you write about those issues. So if you didn't tear out your balance before you measured something, and you think that's where your data went awry, you would write that in the conclusion, and then you would write what you would do the next time you did the experiment again. Scientists keep lab notebooks where they write down every detail. They'll write down temperature. They may even write what the weather conditions are outside. Good things have come from mistakes that are made in science. Two, off the top of my head, are Teflon and silly putty. Teflon, they were trying to make glue, and they put all this stuff in a pot, and they started cooking it, and they said, hey, let's go to lunch. Well, when they came back from lunch, they couldn't get the container apart. Eventually, they had to cut it open, and inside it was coated with Teflon. Now, had they just thrown things together, we would not have Teflon because they couldn't have repeated the experiment. Silly putty was made when they were trying to find a cheaper substitute for rubber during the war for tires. So they had a lot of different scientists working on it. The silly putty was made, and it didn't quite fit the bill of what they wanted. They put it in a closet. Years later, they were cleaning the closet, and they found it, and they decided to send it out to different scientists and different companies to see if there was any demand for it. And sure enough, a toy company figured out that you could stick this in an egg and sell it as a child's toy. And so without keeping good notes, we would not have silly putty or